हेलो। हेलो तुलिका मैम।
जी सर।
हाँ जी, बना दिया मैंने।
जी थैंक यू सर, थैंक यू।
I'm having a bit of an issue with my camera. I may have to go and come just for a second.
All right.
हेलो निधि मैम।
यस सर।
अब आप होस्ट हैं, वो शायद लेफ्ट कर गए।
अच्छा निधि, आप होस्ट चेंज कर सकते हो आई थिंक। मैंने अभी उनको एडमिट किया है, तो शील जस्ट जॉइन इन, देन यू कैन मेक हर द होस्ट।
Okay.
All right, I think I have it. Just one second. Go ahead and make the co-host.
Cassie, there is an echo.
Yeah, it's a problem on my side. I need to kick my other account out, and then it should. Okay, how is that? Can everyone hear me clearly now?
Yes, yes,
So
we
sorry
can.
for that delay. Okay, thank you for that. So I'm ready. We can get started whenever. Do you want to do any introductions first?
Yeah, so can we wait for another 2 minutes so that we have more people joining?
Okay, how is that?
Yeah.
Can everyone hear me clearly now?
Yes.
Please humor me. I just want to test my sound one more time. Is that clear? Tulika?
Yeah.
Cindy? Okay.
Yeah.
Sakshi, I think we can start.
Ma'am, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. I am Sakshi, the student of BLED 4th year. Feel honored to be the anchor for today's workshop on behalf of the Department of Education at Shyama Prasad Mukherjee College for Women, University of Delhi. I warmly welcome all the participants to this insightful session. Today's workshop on designing arguments writing assignments while maintaining responsible AI use has been organized in collaboration with Regional English Language Office, RELO, US Embassy. Under the guidance of our esteemed TIC, Dr. Pushpa Kumari, along with our convener, Dr. Nidhi Seth and Dr. Krishna Priya Seth, with the support of our co-convener, Dr. Tulika Vada. I feel privileged to introduce our distinguished resource person, Dr. Casey De Filippo. She holds a PhD in Anthropology and Development Studies from University of Melbourne and has a strong academic background in international development and social change. She is currently serving as an English language fellow with the US Embassy in India, where she teaches academic writing, research methods, and communication skills to students at leading institutions. She has also worked extensively as an educator, instructor, and teacher trainer in the United States and internationally supporting learners from diverse cultural and educational backgrounds. Her work focuses on helping educators designing effective learning experiences while adapting to modern challenges such as the ethical use of AI in education. Her interdisciplinary background and global teaching experience make her session especially valuable for all of us as future educators. In today's rapidly evolving digital world where AI tools are becoming increasingly common, it is important for prospective teacher to learn how to guide students in using these tools responsibly while maintaining originality and critical thinking. This workshop will provide us with practical strategies and insights to achieve that balance. Now, I would like to invite Tamanna for housekeeping announcements. I hope this session will be engaging, informative, and enriching for everyone. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Before we begin, I would like to share a few important housekeeping announcements to ensure that the session runs smoothly. Kindly keep your microphones on mute throughout the session to avoid any background noise or disturbance. Please keep your cameras on at the beginning and towards the end of the session. Please follow the instructions given by the resource person carefully during the session. We encourage everyone to actively participate in the activities and discussions. Your involvement will make the session more engaging and productive. If you have any questions, you may either use the chat box or wait for the appropriate time to ask as guided by the resource person. Please ensure that you remain attentive and avoid any distractions during the workshop. The session will continue until 5 p.m. with a short break in between. Details about the break will be shared during the session. Thank you for your cooperation. Let's have a great and productive workshop. Now I would like to hand over the session to Dr. De Filippo. Welcome, ma'am. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with all of you and to share a bit of hopefully my wisdom and what I spend my career doing. So let me quickly share my screen. All right, that should be good. Okay, is that okay for everybody? Perfect, thank you. All right, so let's get into the session. Today's session is going to be built on, I'll do some of my own introductions first. Then in order to teach any of this, you need to know how to build an argument. So we are going to discuss that quite a bit because that's something that is maybe more and more being taught in India, but a lot of people haven't built that skill set. Then we'll talk about mapping AI boundaries and responsible AI use. And then we'll go into the building of writing assignments, and we'll actually design one ourselves today before we finish up. If anybody would like to follow along with the slides or keep them for later, I have a QR code on the screen. I will leave it up for just for a few more seconds. So anybody who would like to can do that. But you know what? I will also drop this in the chat. So you are free to take those slides and follow along if you would like to. It's not necessary. Okay, so with that, I've already been introduced, so I don't have to repeat too much, but I am a visiting professor here. I am based at MIT World Peace University in Pune. I was previously based in Gujarat. So I've been here over a year and a half, but my time is running out. I'm only here until June, and then my fellowship finishes. I have been able to also go to institutions across India, from Bhubaneswar to Shillong to Lucknow. So I've had an opportunity to work with students and faculty at all of these universities, and that's what I bring to you today. I have also, I've published within my own field in academia. I'm a former journalist, so I bring all of that knowledge to the table, and that's what I want to share with you. And I also like to add in a fun fact, which is I'm vegetarian, and Indians tend to think that's very interesting because they have this idea that most people in the US eat meat, which is true, but I do not. Okay, so I have some questions about you that I would like to ask. So I would like to ask everyone in your own realm, if this is true for you, please give me a thumbs up. That way I can get a sense of who you are, even though it's a big group and we can't necessarily talk to each other much today. So, have you ever written academic essays in English? If so, please go ahead and give me a thumbs up. I can see how many of you have. I see some. You can give me a thumbs down if not. Okay. Have you ever been formally taught how to structure an argumentative essay? Give me a thumbs up if so. Okay, a lot less there. Okay, perfect. Do you feel confident developing a clear and focused thesis statement? That may also be called an argument, a claim. If so, give me a thumbs up. Okay, maybe not. So that's great because that's what we're going to be working on in this session. Don't worry. Let me see. Do you regularly support your arguments with credible academic evidence? This might be journal articles, book chapters, or books. Give me a thumbs up if so. Okay. It's so slow. Anybody who just joined, please give me a thumbs up if this sentence is true for you. I want to get a sense of your skill level and your history. Have you ever used peer-reviewed sources, such as journal articles, in your writing? Have you cited these sources? Okay, a lot more there. Lots of people have done this before. Okay, good. Are you familiar with at least one formal citation style, such as APA, MLA, Chicago? Oh, lots of people on that one. Okay, great. Do you outline your essays before writing them? Give me a thumbs up if so. Okay, quite a few. All right, excellent. So now I have a sense of you and your process when you write. And that's excellent to know because I can adapt a little bit as we go through this session. Okay, so today I am giving you an overview of the global norm of effective writing. And it at times may have, I may mention the academic side of things because of course your pre-service teachers were focused on communicating within academia, or sorry, within the school system. But this actually plays out generally. So the global norm of effective writing is that you should be clear but concise with one main argument. So with publishing my own work in academia, I had to learn that skill set that is very popular in US, in Australia, which is where I did my PhD, in Europe. Sometimes India has a more passive style. And part of that's because people don't spend as much time writing essays. They don't build this skill set. So when you're teaching writing, you want to teach people to be clear but concise, have one argument that they're supporting. So for instance, if you're writing an essay, you shouldn't have 2 or 3 things you're teaching in that essay. You should have one main argument. And that's going to actually help the audience follow along, because you can actually convince them of whatever that argument is. And so any book you read that's an academic book, or even an academic who's writing for a general audience, the book is going to have one main goal of explaining one overall thing. So keep that in mind, because that's what we're going to be moving forward with, is this idea of how do we write clearly and concisely. There's a method to the madness of how to do so. Now, there are a few other reasons I'm teaching this, one of which is NEP 2020 and India's future. I'm assuming most of you or all of you know that India is trying to move towards hands-on learning as of the National Education Policy in 2020. The government stated that they want more critical thinking and evaluating, project-based learning, experiential and hands-on learning in schools. But that's not what's fully happening on the ground yet, because systems, institutions, and employee trainings have not caught up. And this movement towards writing essays and other activities, including the writing process, are very much moving towards the NAP 2020 goals. So it's a really great opportunity for you to add that into your classes moving forward. It's also a wonderful skill for any person to have, because we live in a misinformation era, right? Misinformation is rampant at the moment. And in fact, there are more articles written now by AI than there are written by humans. And so in this era, we have to be very careful about what we trust and how we judge information. So people have to learn how to judge an argument and how to build an argument, which is what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to quickly check real fast to see if there's any questions as we're getting started, because now we're going to go into what makes an argument. Okay, I think we're okay. I will try to check here and there just to see if there are any questions. But there are 3 components to a strong argument. It has to have these 3 components, or it's not a strong argument. The first, a claim, the main point or assertion. You may also hear, the thesis statement, thesis. We use all of these other words as well. It has to have evidence and support as well. This could come in the form of facts, statistics, anecdotes, or experiences, expert opinions that support the claim. But it has to be support that's strong enough to actually hold that claim. So that's the other piece, is that some evidence might be weak and you don't want to choose it just because it's not strong enough. And then reasoning. There has to be the logical connection between the evidence and the claim. So thinking critically is necessary, as is that clear and concise argument. And the other piece of this is that I always want you to consider, when you are communicating an argument, you should always be thinking of your audience. And I think this is one conversation that, this is one thing that teachers maybe forget to think about when they're teaching, but actually it makes perfect sense, because when you're in front of the classroom, who are you trying to communicate with? Every student in front of you, right? You want every student in front of you to understand. It's almost the same idea when you're writing an essay. Even though you're not in the same room with that person who may read it, you want to consider them and what they're going to think when they're reading. Is it going to be clear to them? You want to make sure your ideas are contextualized enough that they are right with you with understanding what you're trying to explain. And with argumentative essays, you're trying to convince them. So you want to make sure it's solid enough that potentially you can convince them of your argument. Okay, so those 3 pieces, once again, I'm just going to quickly say them again: the claim, the evidence or the support, and then that reasoning. Your argument needs all three pieces to be complete. So in order to talk about what makes a strong argument, I'm actually going to go backwards. I'm going to tell you some very common examples of some bad arguments that we see all over society, be it in politics or advertisements or individual conversations with family members. These are really, really commonly used. And because we've grown up with them, sometimes they can even be convincing. So I find it really useful to actually question those bad arguments around us, those weak arguments, in order to then build better ones. Okay, so let me tell you about logical fallacies. Logical fallacies just means weak arguments. A fallacy is something that's not true. It doesn't work. And so these are like basically a flaw in thinking. So they're common errors in reasoning that undermine your own argument. They can be illegitimate arguments or irrelevant points. And they often, or pretty much always, lack evidence that supports them, right? So people will just try to use logic to combine their argument and that, or so basically they use argument and logic and they say, this is true because of this. If it doesn't make sense yet, don't worry, in just a second it will. I just want to quickly note that fallacies can sound persuasive, but they weaken your credibility and logic. If you've spent time thinking through and learning how to build an argument and you see these, you're going to quickly realize that it's a logical fallacy and you may not follow that. You may not be persuaded by the argument anymore. So it's really important that you have this skill set and that you can teach this skill set. So people want those trusted, reasoned voices who use logic to build their argument. So let me give you an example here so we can see this toothpaste. And this happens to be my favorite toothpaste in the United States, although I haven't been able to find it here. But this is an ad from Australia where they have the same toothpaste. And they've said, you've made the switch. Over 1 million Australians have already tried this toothpaste. So this is a logical fallacy called bandwagon. It's saying everyone is doing it, so it must be great. So this is one form of a logical fallacy where they're trying to convince you, not using fact, but just by saying, oh, look, everyone must be doing it. But in fact, that's not a strong argument. Okay. Oh gosh. So let me discuss some of these logical fallacies with you. Oh, here we go. So there are actually many dozens of logical fallacies. We will not discuss all of them today, of course, but I want to talk about some of the most common ones with you, because when you recognize some of these flaws in thinking, you can build stronger arguments. Okay, so the first one to discuss, appeal to emotion. This is using emotional manipulation or persuasion rather than logical reasoning. And it's very common, especially in politics and advertising. So for instance, if you don't donate to this charity, you don't have a heart. Okay, and so here's another example right here. This Coca-Cola ad right there is open a Coke, open happiness, right? If you open this, you'll be happy. So it is that appeal to emotion. False dilemma is another very common one. It presents only two options where there may be actually many more. So for instance, you're either with us or against us. In fact, there's many places to sit. You don't have to have one opinion or the other. But with this logical fallacy, people make it a binary choice because then they're more likely to persuade people to their side. Okay. Slippery slope is the next one. This is arguing that one small action will lead to a chain of resulting events. So the example I have here, if we allow students to wear hats in school, then they'll start wearing pajamas next. And if they wear pajamas, why not slippers? Before you know it, the classroom will be a chaotic mess. I had a student last year in my class, when I was talking about logical fallacies to them, she gave a great example from her mother. She said, my mom does this sometimes. My mom says, you have to study for this test because if you don't study for this test, you'll fail the test and then you'll end up dropping out of school and then you'll end up not married and you'll never have a good life. And so that's kind of an example, right, where somebody says one small action can lead to a chain of events. And I have heard that slippery slope here in India quite a few times, both on the personal level as well as in politics and other places. Okay, so appeal to emotion, false dilemma, slippery slope. 3 logical fallacies. I'm hoping you're seeing that all 3 of these are missing evidence and they don't have a clear logic to them. They have a logic that's based on weak reasoning, right? So we want stronger reasoning when we're building an argument, and we're going to keep talking about that. Okay, hold on one second here. Let's talk about a few more. Oh gosh. Okay, there we go. Attacking. Okay, the next one is ad hominem. This is extremely common in politics, and I like to say sometimes in family dynamics as well. So ad hominem is attacking the person rather than the argument. So you can't trust John's opinion on climate change because he's a conspiracy theorist. So sometimes in a debate between 2 people running for office, for instance, the one person will say something about the economy and say, what is this person, this is the problem of the economy. And the other person, rather than answering his argument about the economy, might come back and say, well, you can't comment on the economy because you're a millionaire, or something like that. So they're attacking the person rather than the argument. And as I said, I've seen this in family dynamics as well here. There, your brother or sister may attack you rather than the argument you're making. Okay, appeal to authority. This is where you're claiming something is true just because an authority figure said so. I see this quite commonly in India as well, because there is a lot of hierarchical respect here. So here's one example. Dr. Smith, a renowned physicist, believes in astrology. Therefore, astrology must be true. Okay. Few examples so far. One more for you, and then I'm going to check and see if there's any questions. Hasty generalization. This is drawing a conclusion based on a small sample size or insufficient evidence. I met 2 rude people from New York, so all New Yorkers must be rude, right? I gave the example of being a vegetarian. A lot of people have seen in movies or whatnot that, I heard of a couple people who are vegetarian, or, I saw in movies that lots of people are vegetarian. So I assumed most people or all people are vegetarian. Hasty generalization is best. The best way to give the example is when you hear 1 or 2 stories, and so then you assume that it's true for all of a place. So we can almost turn it around, and it's a better example, right? Because you may have seen many movies where people are eating meat that take place in the U.S., but for a lot of people in the U.S., maybe they know less about India, and maybe they meet a couple of Indians, and both of them are vegetarians. They assume, oh, everyone in India is a vegetarian because I met 2 people who are vegetarian, right? That's a perfect example of a hasty generalization. I met 1 or 2 people, a small sample size, and so that must be true of the whole country. So that's hasty generalization in a nutshell, and it's quite common as well because our brains like to fill in the blanks. Like, we like to see patterns. So if we meet a couple of people who do something one way, then you assume that it's done by everyone that way, but it's weak logic. Okay, let me quickly check for any questions. Okay, I think we're okay so far. Thank you for following along. All right, so ad hominem, appeal to authority, hasty generalization. We have 3 more we're going to talk about today. So there are more logical fallacies. There are quite a few, but I just want to introduce them. As you can probably see, there's a lot. This is a lot of information if you haven't heard of logical fallacies before. So I don't want to overwhelm you too much because 9 is already probably a little bit overwhelming. So the next one is the straw man. This is misrepresenting an opponent's argument to make it easier to attack. So here's my example, and then I'll explain this a little more. People who support space exploration think that solving problems on Earth is not important. When I explain this one to people, I love to talk about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I'm assuming hopefully everyone knows who he is. I don't know of I need to figure out an Indian version. But Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, he's very buff, he's very strong. If you were to go and try to attack Dwayne The Rock Johnson, you'd probably not be successful, right? The Rock is too strong. He's too muscular. You can use Jason Momoa or, any of those really strong guys. You can't just take them down. They're very strong. They have too much strength. But if you were to have a scarecrow or a straw man and you tried to punch him, it would easily fall because it's nothing, right? No muscles to hold it up. You could easily knock it down. And so this idea of a straw man is rather than attacking the whole argument, the rock form of the argument, you take just a piece of it. You take the straw man that's easier to attack. So you misrepresent it to take just a small piece of it because that's easier to defend your opinions about. So people who support space exploration think that solving problems on Earth is not important, right? So he's taking the piece of what about Earth rather than the entire argument about space exploration. So hopefully that makes a bit of sense. So rather than answering that strong argument, it's just taking the small piece of it because it's easier to attack. Circular reasoning, using the conclusion as evidence to support the conclusion. So it's basically going in a circle. I see this a lot as well, especially with maybe some of the older people I've worked with have said things to me like, oh, we have to do it that way because that's the way it's always been done, right? And that's an example of circular reasoning. Now, there might be an argument for why we should do it that way, but that's a weak argument. Rather than saying this is the way we've always done it, why is that particular way the best way? Does it still serve everybody? So here's another example of that. I believe in freedom of speech because everyone should be able to speak freely, right? It goes in a circle. It doesn't actually have those three pieces. It doesn't have the claim, the logical reasoning, and the evidence. And then the last one, the name of it is post hoc ergo propter hoc. It just means assuming that one thing is connected to another thing because it follows it, right? So that the first thing caused the second thing. So I wore my lucky socks to the exam and I got an A. Therefore, my lucky socks caused me to get an A. I love this one, and I am perfectly guilty of this one myself throughout my college years because I always said I lived in a very rainy place when I went to university, and I would always say, if I forget my umbrella, it rains. If I remember my umbrella, it doesn't rain. And I would always joke about that because it felt like the truth. Of course, it was not, but I tended to say that, oh, I brought my umbrella, so it didn't rain, or so because I was noticing that habit when it did or did not happen. So you may notice places in your own life where you're already using some of these. That's very normal because we live in a society where they're quite common. Okay, so I've introduced 9 different logical fallacies to you. And now I want to test you a little bit, a soft, easy test, I hope, just to make sure we understand them and we can identify them a little bit. So here's the first one. And in the chat, please go ahead and add A, B, C, or D. Please follow along just for fun. There are no scores, but it's going to be helpful for you to remember these. So go ahead and follow along as we play. I just have a handful of questions for you. So if we allow students to use calculators in exams, soon they won't learn math at all, and eventually society will collapse. Right, it's just what is the answers. Okay, excellent. I'm seeing lots and lots of B. And that, of course, is what it is. It is slippery slope. It's that idea that one small action will lead to one effect. The reality is, one small action, we don't know what the effect will be. We can't assume we know. Okay, here's the next one. Which of the following best describes an ad hominem fallacy? And please be brave and answer. Even if your answer is different from everyone else, there's no consequences, even if you get it wrong. So please participate. Okay, I'm seeing lots and lots of C, and that is it. It's attacking the person making the argument rather than the argument itself. A strong argument should be attacking the argument itself, not a person. Okay, last one, true or false? A false dilemma fallacy happens when someone pretends there are only two possible options, even though more possibilities exist. A little more time for those still answering. Okay, excellent. Yes, that is true. All right, perfect. So I have a couple of questions. I think I'm gonna, just for ease, because I want us to write in the chat, let's just look at number one. Where have you seen a logical fallacy recently? And if you have a specific example, please share it. That's actually quite useful, and we can read where we've seen them in the comments. So have you seen it in ads, social media, movies, debates, maybe with a friend or family member? As I said, every person, I believe, is guilty of using them at some point in their life, because they're so, they surround us so clearly everywhere. And so, and across every culture. So I would like you to just think of some examples and share them in the chat so we can compare where we're seeing them most for you. So where have you seen a logical fallacy recently? Go ahead and write your answer. Just had somebody join. So just to repeat for them, right now we are writing in the chat, where have you seen a logical fallacy recently? In ads, social media, movies, or debates? So you can try to follow along if you know what logical fallacies are. If not, just wait and we'll catch you up as we go through. All right, I'm still waiting for some responses in the chat. So I'll give it another minute or two and see what we come up with. I'm still going to give a little time for you all, but Nidhi just wrote that there are too many examples of ad hominem in politics to quote. It's very true. For my own country, which is only two parties, as probably everyone knows, the Democrat and Republican Party, even our last debate, which was Donald Trump and Kamala Harris for the presidency, both of them used ad hominem against each other. And they used it as a political strategy to not answer questions that they didn't necessarily want to answer. So it's something to be aware of. Sometimes people use it on purpose. Oh, interesting. teacher gave me low marks because she had a fight at home. Are you saying that that was a student who said that? Because I have heard that before.
All the time.
Yeah. And I have an example that's almost the opposite of that later on too, where another thing that students say about trying to pass and get higher grades to me. All right. All right. A lot of people are not answering. Please, please, please try to share some opinions. It's really helpful for you, for your own memorization process and remembering these. So please do try to share what you know. But we'll keep going for now. They're certainly in movies all the time, social media, as I said, ads, they're everywhere. And so it's very useful just to start to be aware of that. Because remember, when you can judge for yourself, you can help make decisions about arguments, and you can build better arguments. And I've already kind of answered number 2, so I'm just going to quickly say again, why do people often use logical fallacies? Because we've grown up with them all around us. I remember teachers using them. I remember my parents using them. You know, it's what was taught to them. And some of the logical fallacies are ideas that have been passed down. So for instance, superstitions are a really great example of logical fallacies. Like, you know, I don't know, lucky pennies or broken glass. There's lots of superstitions here in India. And that people follow. Yes, oh, Nidhi, a black cat crossed my path, so I didn't pass my test. And so a lot of these are the same idea. And, you know, you can still believe it. Lots of people still believe it. But when you're doing academic work, you certainly want to make sure you have a stronger argument than that. Okay, so I do have an activity for us. I know that these can maybe be a bit too processed. So I have a game for us. And so we're gonna switch over. Let me switch to this tab. We're gonna play a game of Kahoot. Let me quickly see how many of you have played Kahoot before. If so, please do a thumbs up. Okay, good. Quite a few of you. If you haven't, I'll give you a little bit of detail on it. Oh, and Nidhi just said the fear of number 13 in the US. Not the number 13 per se, but like the 13th day, I'm assuming is what you mean. Yes, Friday the 13th is a horror day for whatever reason. So that definitely true. But I feel like nowadays many people just watch scary movies on Friday the 13th. So, but maybe you're referring to something else that isn't even on my corner of the US. Okay, so I'm going to quickly switch over. You should all see the game starting. And in just a second, it's going to give you a number. You can join on your phone and you can actually play along. I don't know what you name yourself. You can join the game with any name, but go ahead and take just a minute here to join the game by going to www.kahoot.it, or you can scan the QR code and you're going to put in this game pin to play. As I said, once you're in, give yourself any name you would like, and we're going to review this big category of these 9 types of logical fallacies here. I may have even thrown in a couple of extra logical fallacies.
Cassie, could you also post the game pin in the chat box?
Oh, I can indeed.
Or the link with the game pin?
Yes, let me see. I hope this is the right one. Let's see. And please tell me, because it should just automatically open for you, but if not, let me know. Oh, and I'm actually, while we're doing that, I'm going to quickly share my slides again for all of those who've entered later. You would like to follow along. I'm putting the slides in the chat again. Okay, so I'm going to give us a little time. Oh, let me come back. Okay, so everyone should be able to see that. I did switch for a second, but you should be able to see the game pin 625502, or use that QR code to go there. Give a little time as we have more people joining. All right. If anybody's having any logistical issues, please let me know. Looks like people are getting in just fine. All right, I'm going to give it another minute or so as more people join. But please try to be as fast as possible so we can get going. If anybody isn't able to play the game, they don't have a phone maybe, that's fine too. You can play along on paper. You just won't get a score. For those who have joined, and I'm going to give you a little more time, the way this game works is it's going to have a question. You're going to answer the question on your phone, and you want to answer correctly and as quickly as possible to get the highest score. So it's a bit of a competition game, but it's all in fun. Okay, I'm not seeing more people join, so I might just get started. Is that okay? Does anybody need more time? You can let me know. You can. Okay. All right, I'll get started then. You can still join even if we've started the game. So if you need to join, there's the information down at the bottom. You can still join us. Here we go. Everyone I know has started using disposable coffee cups, so they must be better for the environment. I mentioned this one. Three, two. All right, very well done for 4 of you. This one was a little tricky because I only mentioned it. I didn't actually write it down, but the bandwagon logical fallacy is where everyone is doing something, so therefore it must be better, right? Everyone I know is buying iPhones, so it must be the best product. It doesn't actually use logic. You can go and look at an iPhone and decide it's the best product for A, B, C, D reasons. But just because everyone is doing it doesn't necessarily mean it's better. That's a flaw in the logic. Okay. Okay, well done, student. Here we go. Ad says millions of travelers use this superfood for immunity. It's another one we actually didn't mention, but can you figure out? Three, two. So it is appeal to popularity because it's saying millions of people. So I thought I could add in a couple of these that are a little more, you can assume what they are. Appeal to popularity is very similar to bandwagon. It just says because many people are doing it. So bandwagon, everyone is doing it. Appeal to popularity, many people are doing it. So almost the same. But because millions of travelers are doing it, it's great, right? Hasty generalization. Hasty generalization would be like a little different because an example of that would be my mother swears on this and it's made her healthier, so it must work. I know 2 people who ate this superfood and it helped their immunity. So it's just giving those 1 or 2 examples versus appeal to popularity, millions of travelers. Okay, that one was a little tricky, but I want you to actually be critical thinking through this a little bit. Next one. You can't take his opinion on renewable energy seriously. He's invested in oil companies. All right, all across the board, this one is ad hominem, right? He's invested in oil companies, so he's gaining from this. So it's attacking not the argument, but it's attacking the person and his investments. So because of that, it's a form of ad hominem. Remember, you have to attack the argument, not the person. All right, well done to those on the top of the board, but there's still more of the game left. I eat street food, and then I get great photos. Street food causes good photos. Five, 4. Okay, we're still all across the board here. So this one is post hoc, ergo propter hoc. Just as a reminder, because I know your heads may be full, so thank you. We're going to be going on a journey today. This will all make sense by the end. Just stay with me, okay? I eat street food, action 1. Action B, great photos, right? It's assuming that two things are connected. Post hoc, ergo propter hoc. It just means one thing causes another, basically, is the gist of it. So I eat street food, then I get great photos. So therefore, street food causes great photos. In this example, it seems maybe silly because I think it does. But there are other examples that we hear all the time that people believe and people follow because they maybe are a little more connected. So just because one thing connects to another doesn't mean that the first thing caused the second thing, because it's all about that connection. Does one thing cause the next thing, right? So you might have some traditions or superstitions like that. Every time before I take a test, I wear my lucky t-shirt and I always pass my test. Therefore, my lucky t-shirt helps me pass my test. Just as a reminder, slippery slope is one small action causes a chain of following actions. It's making that assumption. Appeal to emotion is causing people to feel an emotion just to try to maybe manipulate them a bit. So we'll see that as we continue on. Okay, let's keep trying. Next one. We should cut down forests because we need land for agriculture, which proves that cutting down forests is necessary. Five seconds left. Okay, excellent. We're getting there. Okay, so if it were false dilemma, there would be two choices If there were two choices to choose between, that's false dilemma. In this case, we don't have two choices. So that category does not fit. Circular reasoning does, right? Circular reasoning is starting back right where you left off. This is because of this. So there's no actual evidence or logic there. It's just saying this is why, this is the way it is. So we should cut down forests because we need land for agriculture. That shows that cutting down forests is necessary. Now, you could actually write a very good argument on we need land for agriculture because of economic reasons, et cetera, sustainability, growth, whatever it might be. But just saying that we need land for agriculture so that we have to cut down forests is not a strong argument. Okay, very well done to the 4 of you who got it. Just as a reminder, anybody who didn't join, the game pin is still at the bottom of the screen, so you can still join in. It's all for fun. Please join in and give it a try. All right, we haven't had too much movement, but some people are coming up. Very well done. Okay, next one. Switching to electric cars to reduce pollution is like trying to clean a dirty room with a toothbrush. Quick note, we did not talk about this one yet. So I'm going to introduce a couple more to you in this game. So it's okay if you get it wrong. This is all for fun. Excellent. Okay. You did a great thing, all of you, because you knew there were two we didn't talk about. Faulty analogy is when you're comparing two things that are just too different, right? Switching to electric cars to reduce pollution and cleaning a dirty room with a toothbrush, they're too different. It doesn't actually add to the conversation because those two things are too different. Okay. We're going to do a few more. And then we may pause. We may not do it all. Okay. Here's the next one. Tourist sees one village eat chicken and concludes, everyone in this country eats only chicken. Three, two. Excellent. So that's that hasty generalization, assuming that because it's true for one or two people that you've met, that that's true for everyone. Give me 1 second. Oh, here we go. All right, very well done to those at the top of the leaderboard. Okay, here's the next one. I saw one article that said wind turbines can harm birds. So all wind energy must be bad for wildlife. Okay, excellent. So now we got it. You can see one article does not make something true. It could be, but you have to do more research, right? One article is just one piece of information. You have to collect more information to actually check and understand something. So I hope you can see as we continue on that understanding logical fallacies is so helpful for understanding the world because you're looking at information and trying to decide if it's true. So when you look at something, you can try to say, is this misinformation? How is the logic? Where is the evidence? Is the evidence strong? All of those things are important. Okay, so we have, let's keep going because I feel like now it's going to start getting easier because you're starting to get more familiar with things. Okay, one winter was colder than usual, so global warming must be a hoax. Three, two. All right, excellent. So we can see the pattern again. One winter is not enough to judge everything on, and you don't have any support for that argument. Now, when you have a generalization like that, you can go and do more research, but the generalization itself, it's not enough. All right. Let's keep going because I think this is going to start helping us. If we offer cheap tours with packed lunches, our whole tourism industry will collapse. Okay. So remember that slippery slope is assuming one action will lead to 3 actions down the line. Everything will collapse just because you offer cheap tours with packed lunches. So we can't do that because the end result will be collapse. That's that slippery slope ideology. Okay, we may just keep going because I think and hope this is helping us get all of these straight in our minds. Okay. We must choose between economic growth and protecting the environment. We can't have both. Okay, excellent. False dilemma. You can clearly see the 2 choices. False dilemma is often quite easy to identify because it's those clear 2 choices. In fact, it doesn't have to be 2 choices. That's why it's a logical fallacy. You have many other options. Okay, excellent. All right, climate change isn't real because the climate has always changed naturally. Climate change isn't real because the climate has always changed naturally. Okay, excellent. So remember, a faulty analogy is when you're comparing two things, right? Like, I don't know, giving, one of the examples I'm thinking of is like giving your students extra time on a test, or like letting them redo a test is like letting them rerun a race, right? Something like that, where these two things are not the same, but you try to compare to make your argument. You don't see that happening here. You only see the circular reasoning. Climate change isn't real because it's always changed, right? In fact, you can say climate change isn't real and you can use data and evidence to support your argument, but this is not doing that. Okay. This might be the last one. Idea. Tourists should use reusable bottles. So you want tourists to carry giant jugs and to dehydrate? Three, two. Okay, some of us got it. So remember, ad hominem is attacking a person. Straw man is when you take a piece of the argument and answer, because it's easier. This one is tourists should use reusable bottles. So you could say they shouldn't, but rather than doing that, they've just said, oh, you want them to carry giant jugs and dehydrate because of having giant jugs, right? It doesn't actually make sense, and it's not talking about reusable bottles. So often what the straw man does is it takes just that small piece of the argument and almost takes them off track to try to make it seem silly of the idea of reusable bottles. And you see this one a lot in politics. All right, we'll see. We're going to end there, but well done to the 5 of you, student hashtag. Priya, Anjali, Tanu, and Ed. Thank you so much, and thank you for everyone else for playing. Just a little bit of a review of these concepts because it's not easy to learn all of this in a very, very short time. Okay, so hopefully, can everyone see my slides again? Can I get a thumbs up if so? Just to make sure. Can you see my slides? Okay, perfect. So we're going to go through logical fallacies just a tiny bit more. I want to give you some real life examples, and then we'll go into building an argument, the core of what we want to discuss today. So just as a reminder, logical fallacies are problematic for 2 reasons. They lack the evidence and support, and they lack the logical reasoning, and any argument needs the claim, the evidence, the reasoning. So it's lacking 2/3 of what it needs. So I have some examples from history. Of course, my history is more of the US. I've added in one example from India as well, or not just history, but the world and politics and things like that. But I love this example because it's a real example. And I feel like it very much fit with a women's university. If we let women vote, the next thing you know, we'll let animals vote. This was used to actually oppose the women's suffrage movement in the 19th and early 20th centuries here in the US. So what logical fallacy is that? Can anybody recognize it? You can add it in the chat if you recognize it. Remember, be brave. No problem if you're wrong. Please be brave for me. Okay, it's not ad hominem because it's not attacking a person. You could say it's attacking women, but it's not attacking any individual person. It is, do we have any other guesses? Hasty generalization? No, because hasty generalization would be with just one woman. This one is slippery slope, right? If you let women vote, pretty soon animals will be voting. It's trying to take down and say one action will lead to all these other actions. And in fact, now women, of course, vote in the US. Animals do not vote. That did not happen. But this was actually used. This was actually believed by people at the time. Okay. So, oh, you can't see the slides anymore? Okay, 1 second. Oh, can you see them again? Hold on.
No, not yet.
Okay, give me 1 second. Not sure what happened. Let me come back over here. Thank you for that. All right. It's taking us one slide ahead, but we'll get back. Okay. All right, you should be okay now. Is that correct?
Yeah, now we can see the slide.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. I will, please let me know if that happens again. I'll be double checking. Okay, so here's one other example. This is from 2001 when the terrorist attacks happened in the United States, September 11th. Basically, just a week later, on September 20th, George W. Bush said every nation in every region now has a choice to make, a decision to make. Either you're with us or you're with the terrorists. Which logical fallacy is that? Okay, excellent. I see some of you guessing. It is false dilemma. Yeah, bandwagon is when everyone believes one thing. Thank you, Sashi, for trying. But false dilemma is those two choices. So we can see it here. We're going to go a little bit faster because I want to make sure we finish this by break so we can move on to the other activities. I have one example from here in India as well. I found this one blog post, and he was saying, constructing temples is wasting society's precious labor and time resources when the vast majority of Indians do not have enough quality food to eat. Which logical fallacy would that be? This one might be a little harder actually to see. I might just add, or I might just tell you. I see some. Yeah, you could argue this is a straw man because it's taking just a piece of the argument. Because he's making the argument, you could also say he's making a false dilemma because he's saying it's either the economy and temples or food. So he's saying it's either temples or food and then to do. But it really is a straw man of those two. And you'll see actually that sometimes people use more than one logical fallacy together when they're building an argument, right? In politics, you'll see people using multiple logical fallacies in one debate. Okay. So I wanted to give us some examples in like real life where you might see these, because that's going to maybe click with you a little bit more. So for instance, slippery slope. If we allow students to use phones once, soon no one will pay attention in class at all. If I skip one workout, I'll stop exercising forever. If we extend the deadline, no one will ever submit on time again. Right? So here are some slippery slope ideas. I'm going to keep going just because of time. I hope that's okay. Okay, false dilemma. We've heard quite a few examples of that. You either study all night or you will fail the exam. Either we ban phones completely or students will never learn. You're either a good student or a lazy one, right? These are all false dilemma. They don't actually serve us well. They're creating that false binary. Hasty generalizations. I had one bad teacher, so all teachers are bad. That's silly, but some people might think that, right? Some people have a bad teacher and they think they don't like school anymore. My friend failed using online learning, so online learning doesn't work. 2 students cheated, so this whole class is dishonest. So some ideas of some hasty generalizations you might hear. Hopefully you're thinking of some others that you've heard or experienced in real life. And then of course ad hominem. You can't trust her opinion about studying. She gets bad grades. He says group work is useful, but he's lazy. Don't listen to him about time management. He's always late. Right? That one I've heard. I may have even said that one before. Right? So these are some examples of logical fallacies in terms of the ad hominem form. The last one, I think this last one, appeal to emotion. If you don't help me with this assignment, you're a bad friend, right? Appealing to somebody's emotions to get what you want. This is one that I've actually had before. You should give me a higher grade because I worked really hard. I've had students say that before, but I tried hard. I did this and this. I should get a higher grade. And I have to say, but look at the rubric. I can get the rubric, and we'll get to rubric soon. Okay, if we don't cancel homework, students will be miserable. So a few examples of appeal to emotion. Okay. All right, so now let's get into the core. We're going to take a break at about 3:30. So in case you're wondering, we'll have a break then, and you'll be able to relax your mind for a few minutes. And then we'll go back into building a strong argument, and then, of course, going on to building writing assignments, all of that, okay? So we've talked about what makes a weak argument. Now, what makes a strong argument? Okay, so the important part of all of this is that if you can't identify a weak argument, you can't properly build a strong one. So I just want to remind you one more time, you need that claim, the main point or assertion, you need the evidence and support, and you need the reasoning anytime you're building an argument. And I say this somewhere in the slides, but I'm going to say it right now. It's important to remember that this can be when you're speaking to someone. It could be while having a conversation with a friend. It could be having a professional conversation. It could be writing for academic purposes. It could be while teaching. This style of using a claim, making evidence and support, and reasoning can be used all the time and should be used all the time. So keep that in mind. It's not just for one purpose. If you want to argue with a friend about where to eat for lunch, you can use this style to give a claim, say, I want to eat here. You can give some evidence and support. You can give some reasoning, right? So this is the style you can use all the time to build an argument. You don't want to use, appeal to emotion and say, no, I want there or I'll never be happy. I want momos or I'll never be happy. Instead, use this style, build a strong argument to make your claim for where you should eat for lunch. Okay. So here are two examples. Which one is stronger? Go ahead and say it in the chat. 1 or 2? Okay, lots and lots of 1. Yes, 1 is certainly stronger. You may even notice that argument 2 is that straw man idea where they take just a piece of the argument. Argument 1 has some evidence and some reasoning in it, so it's stronger. I do want to just quickly note, sometimes you may see a logical fallacy and be very influenced by it because we're so used to seeing them. They may be convincing to you still. So I want you to question that. When you are hearing arguments, do you recognize logical fallacies? Do they convince you? If so, why? Consider that as you go through this process. Okay, next one. Sorry, there's a little delay. Okay, there we go. Which one is stronger to you? 1 or 2? Yes, so once again, number 1 is stronger. We can see argument 2 is that ad hominem idea. You're attacking the person rather than the argument itself. So we can see that argument 1, it could probably use a little more reasoning. This is a shorter version, but it does have the claim and the evidence. Okay. We'll do maybe, yeah, a couple more. How about this one? Argument 1 or 2, which one is stronger? Excellent. Yes, it is number 2. We see with number 2, once again, I cut it for length. It could have a little more reasoning in there if we wanted, but it definitely has a claim. It has some support, and you could reason why that's the case as well. You could add that in there a bit. And then this last one last one, which one is stronger, 1 or 2? Okay. All right. Okay, perfect. So I hope you're seeing and at least slightly believing that that is true, because at least you know the pattern. Argument 1 here is that idea of post hoc ergo propter hoc, that one thing leads to another thing, right? That one thing caused another thing. So, okay, here in argument 2, right, we have more of the claim. We have the claim, we have the logical reason, or sorry, we have the claim, the reasoning, and we have the evidence. So just that reminder, every argument needs those 3 pieces. That's what an argument is. You need that claim. I don't know if there's another word for it here. Please let me know if there is. In the US, we have quite a few words for it. We call it an argument. We call it a claim. We call it a thesis statement. We call it a thesis. So any of those words and any other word you use, but it's having that clear argument for your piece. But an argument is made of claim, evidence, clear logic, connecting it all. Okay. Just a quick note, and this is what I mentioned before. Okay. This is useful in so many areas of your life. You can use this style of building an argument in your academic writing. In fact, it's expected in your academic writing, in your professional writing. So if you're building any type of argument for a position, a job position, something like that, you may actually have to state, we should spend funds this way because of this, this, and this. For presentations, this is always the way it is in India, but all over the world. If any of you seen a debate, most of them are this style. Across the US, even like if you see TED Talks, things like that, which are actually global now, they always use this style as well. You want that argument, you want the evidence, you want that reasoning. Professional conversations, you want to build an argument when you speak. And then, of course, even personal conversations. I gave lots of personal examples because I want you to know you don't have to wait for a professional occasion to practice this skill set. You can do it tonight at home or, throughout the week. You'll have opportunities to try to build this skill set because anytime you're talking to someone, you can build an argument. And it's actually a great way to even become more comfortable, maybe with the English language, depending on your skill set there. But you can do this in your own language as well. Okay, I want to quickly ask, are there any questions as we continue going? If there are any questions, please let me know in the chat. Otherwise, I'll continue on. Okay, I'll keep checking there as we go through. All right, so I want you to practice this. Right, I've given us a lot of information, I know, because I think logical fallacies, if you haven't heard much about them, they can be a lot to remember. So thank you for going through that process with me, but it is really, really useful because it helps us think of those 3 pieces that we need when we're building an argument. So I have a prompt for you. And so with this prompt, I want you to build an argument. The prompt is this: should mobile phones be allowed in classrooms? There's no right answer. You could say mobile phones should be allowed in class because of A, B, and C. You could say mobile phones should not be allowed in class because of A, B, and C. There are strong arguments to be made on either side. Sorry. I have a little bit of air pollution sickness. I don't know if anybody else has had that before, so please forgive my throat. Okay, so there are weak arguments on both sides of this. You can say that mobile phones should be allowed in classrooms and use logical fallacies, and it could be a weak argument, or you can build a strong argument. Same is true with the other side. You could see you could say mobile phones should not be allowed in class. You can use a weak argument, or you can use a strong argument. So there's no right answer here. What's important is that you build a strong argument and turn your opinion into a supported argument, okay? So what I want you to do is build a claim. I'm going to give you a few minutes to do this because it might take a minute to think of it. And then you're going to write it in the chat. What is your claim? Have a piece of evidence as well. You're free to look up something if you need to, but do not use AI. Please, please, please follow along. We're going to have something else we use AI for after this. So for now, I want us to try something without AI, and then we'll do some AI after the break, I think. So please go ahead, write out your claim. You're free to look for data to build your claim online. That's fine. Okay. Any questions? Okay. Go ahead and build that. I'll give you a few minutes and then I'll check in. Please ask any questions you have in the chat. I very much want to make sure everyone's participating. All right. So Tanu, what you just said is actually an example of circular reasoning. Because I said, what is your argument? And you said, well, it should not be allowed because many people already have a ban. But I want you to actually use some argument here. So what does the research show? Maybe you can actually visit some research, or you can use your own experiences. So you can say something like, no, it should not be allowed because it distracts students. They use it for purposes other than schoolwork and whatever else, right? So I've just added in, and I see some people are still writing, and I'm going to come down to those, but I've added 2 templates that are the most common in the US. I've been using them since I was very young, and they're your secret ways to actually write this. So if ever you want to use this style, you can say whatever your argument is. So mobile phones should be allowed in the classroom, and then you're going to give 3 reasons, A, B, and C. And the same is true if you say it should not be. Mobile phones should not be allowed in the classroom because of A, B, and C. Okay, perfect. So you're almost there. You just want to twist. Like you can mention that they're not allowed, but that is not a proper argument itself. That can be a background to your argument, but your argument should be based on fact. The fact that it's not allowed isn't enough evidence. It's circular reasoning there. But it's useful because then we can actually talk that through. Okay. All right, so I'm seeing Alicia's example. Mobile phones should not be used in classrooms because they reduce communication skills and participation. Studies show that students using phones are more distracted and less engaged, which limits real life interaction and weakens speaking and social confidence. Excellent. So you have a reason for it, and then you've gone in and you added the evidence, and you have the reasoning as well. So you have the claim, reasoning, evidence. Perfect, Alicia. Okay, let's just look through these a little bit. And I just want to note, if any of you make mistakes like Tonu, I know I brought out that example. This is brand new for most students I've worked with. I like when you make mistakes. It's very helpful for learning. So please don't be afraid to make mistakes. And thank you for allowing me to talk about that with you. Okay, so Priya said there must be policies and procedures in order to regulate the use of mobile phones in schools. Oh gosh, hold on. While fighting for the balance for cell phone use. Okay, so because this is a cited thing, this is not part of your argument. This is somebody else's argument. So you would have to use that as evidence under yours. So you can have the same argument, but you have to frame it so that it's your argument. Because right now, if it's already has a citation, that's actually not your argument, it's somebody else's. So you would want to say something like, mobile phones should be banned or whatever it may be, or phones should be allowed but within regulation, research shows, and then you add that. Okay. Classroom since okay. Medium figure example, mobile phones should not be allowed in the classroom since research on higher school teacher. Oh, 1 second. High school teachers has indicated that 72% of them believes that cell phone distraction is a major problem in the classroom. Okay, excellent. So yeah, you have some evidence there. You could add a citation as well. Okay, so we're gonna take our break now, but we're right on track. So I hope for those of you writing, and I'll check after break, I can check anybody's work during break. So if you send it a little bit late, I'll still check it. Please go through this activity because I'm giving you the simple pattern, whether it be, conversation, a presentation, an essay that you can use to build an argument. And I want you to be teaching that to your students. It's a very useful strategy. And so once you put those 3 things together, you can teach it, and it's really, really useful for giving opportunities for your students globally as well. Because if they go to the US, they're expected to use this style. If they go to a business that's international in any way, they'll be expected to write reports in this way. So this just gives a lot of skills to your students. Okay, so with that, I'm going to have our break. As I said, I will check for any other responses, and I'll edit and send you some information after break. But they look really, really great. So thank you so much. We're going to come back from break at 3:45 or do you want a 15-minute break? I'm going to say 3:45 just because we have a lot to discuss. So a 10-minute break, and we'll come right back here and start on time for the last part of the session. So please go refresh yourself and see you all in 10 minutes. Okay, thank you, everyone. Yes, perfect. Hello, everyone. It's 3:45. I'll give just 30 seconds left just to wait for other people to join, and then we will get started again. All right, I'm going to get started again. Hopefully everyone is back. And so what we're going to do now, everyone overall did a great job with building a claim, using logical reasoning, and using some evidence. So that's wonderful, because that's what you want to be comfortable enough to do with your students. I do want to just quickly point out a couple of things about supporting an argument. It seemed like people were more comfortable with using citations, all of that part of it. So you may already know this, so I'll go quite fast, but please let me know if you have any questions. It's really important when you're supporting arguments with evidence to choose data carefully. I mentioned misinformation and the fact that not all information is created equally. You want to make sure that your argument is supported with respectful, trustworthy sources, because that's going to mean that people are more convinced potentially by your argument. So is the author, is the author an expert in the field? Is it a publication that's well known? Does it add to your argument? Is it the best research to support your argument? Maybe it's great research, but it's 40 years old. Potentially there's something better depending on your topic. Sometimes research that's older is very useful. It depends on the topic. But for many topics, you need more updated information to make your claim. Okay, and a quick connected reminder, in terms of your evidence and your support, you can't just list it. You have to explain it. You have to give the context. So I'm using the word data here. So if you're using any stats or anything like that, but this is true for anecdotes or examples as well. Without some sort of legend or explanation, a map can't tell you where to go. It can only tell you where you're standing. So without a legend in the surrounding terrain, a map can't tell you where to go. It can only tell you where you're standing. And that's really useful because if you have data, if people see the data, they only know where they're standing. They don't know where to go with it. You have to guide them accordingly. Same is true with the anecdotes. This connects with you building your argument. You have to tell people why that data supports your argument, okay? And I wanted to give you an example of how data doesn't speak for itself. I found that some people here in India, well, some, especially in the science field, so maybe it's not a problem here, but I just wanted to state it quickly. People think data speaks for itself, but I have a great example that's been top of mind lately with recent events, where data did not speak for itself. So basically in 1999, the Mars Climate Orbiter was going out into space. It was one engineering team from a company called Lockheed Martin, as well as the NASA team in my country, in the United States. And they were planning together and using data together, except there was a little problem. The data that one team sent to NASA was missing some contextualized information. They sent the number 10 in the software, and NASA assumed it meant 10 newtons, which was not what they were using. They were using, so basically pound force seconds versus Newton seconds force. So because it was different number, basically what happened was that $125 million orbiter drifted too close to Mars and disintegrated in the atmosphere. So one number and a lack of contextualization of that number led to the loss of $125 million and the loss of data and scientific, knowledge that could have come with that. So it's just a quick reminder that be careful when you're using your evidence or support that it's lined up and it's explained. So, for instance, here's some data. If we just stated, United States is 30.62 trillion, or that, India's number 5, India's 4.13 trillion, that doesn't necessarily add to any conversation. We all have our own perspectives. I'm from the US. I might see that the US is at the top and have some perspective on it. Each person here might have some perspective on it, but when you're building an argument, you have to contextualize why it matters. So for instance, here you might see that the GDP growth is 2% versus in India it's 6.6%. You might be making an argument about the growth or something like that. Here's another example that's a little clearer. India versus Luxembourg. India, 3.9 trillion. This was the year prior to the other data. And Luxembourg had 89 billion, so quite a bit smaller. So you can make some assumptions about India versus Luxembourg there. But if you look at your GDP per capita, you're going to see a different number, right? So GDP measures a country's growth and success, but it doesn't necessarily look at quality of life of the average person. So if you're only looking at GDP, you're not necessarily looking at wealth in India. So you have to use contextualized data to make sense of what you want to say. Sometimes that means multiple data sources, multiple contexts, or even evidence sources, be it anecdotes plus data, things like that. And I just want to quickly mention, tied to all of this is authorial voice. This is just a way of seeing if any of you love to read, maybe if you read books like Harry Potter or Hunger Games or any books that you might love, there's always a narrator, right? And when you're writing for school purposes, when you're writing an argumentative essay, and I'm talking to you right now, even though you may be doing this with your students one day, you want to make sure everybody who's writing has an authorial voice. They are writing as the author. So they're not speaking on behalf of the data shows this or this and this. They're clearly building their own argument, right? Mobile phones should be allowed because of this, this, and this. Once you say that, you're owning that that's your argument and trying to prove that that's true. What sometimes happens in India that I've seen is that people let experts speak for them, but it doesn't properly make an argument, right? So instead of clearly stating an argument and then proving it, they may say, research shows this, this, and this, but your argument should be made first, and then any other research should just be proving that. Your ideas are the center of your writing, just like a narrator guides you through Hunger Games or Harry Potter, any other book that you love. I'm not sure what books are too popular here, but you want to make sure that you're clearly guiding the reader through. That's how to prove your argument is strong. I don't know if that's making sense. Because authorial voice is basically just communicating with your audience clearly and saying this, this, and this. It's actually a strategy of being clear and concise, but also making sure that your audience is following your logic. The other piece of this is that your authorial voice is like your fingerprint. And this is going to take us into the AI part of this conversation. So what happens sometimes when students use AI to write their work for them is that it completely takes away their authorial voice. And that's why I think it's a really great tool, since I think all or many of you are pre-service teachers. This is one way to talk to your students about the importance of doing their own writing. ChatGPT completely takes away your authorial voice and makes it maybe even a different opinion. So it could take your argument and completely change it if there are some sentences that are unclear. So you're no longer guiding the audience through your argument, right? So the reader can potentially not even read the same thing. And what I find, and we'll talk about this soon, is that here in India, a lot of students are copying, pasting, and having ChatGPT or any other platform completely correct their essays and then just copying and pasting that and turning it in. So they don't even necessarily know what they're submitting, and it may or may not actually reflect their opinions, which is nerve-wracking. So I was curious. I've gotten to hear the argument that you chose, which may or may not be your opinion. I'm not sure. But what is your opinion of student use of AI during assignments? Go ahead and state it in the chat. 1 being awful, 5 being wonderful. All right, so I think the lowest is 2.8 and the highest is 4. Okay, perfect. So nobody thinks it's awful. That's good. And you could word this a few different ways. When I worded this, the goal of this would be, is it awful that students use AI in their assignments? I actually think it can be a tool because I think that the world is moving towards AI use and they'll probably be using it at work. And so that means that as a teacher, it makes sense sometimes to do activities where they're using AI. It also makes sense sometimes to do activities where there is no AI. And figuring out that scale will depend on the activity and the goals of whatever you're doing at that particular time. So that's what I want to talk about next for a bit, is student use of AI and my own advice, my own experience. And if anybody else is already doing any teaching in the classroom, has any experience that you want to add your own experiences or knowledge, please do share it. For me personally, I found that whether or not teachers are talking about it, students are using AI. So I've chosen to talk about it in my classes and to try to force students to be very aware of how they're using it, because I think I know that they are using it anyway. So some of the topics I discuss with my students are its strengths and weaknesses. So for instance, AI often uses outdated data or it even creates data. I have a few examples I love to give. So for instance, I've tested it out to see some data for different research, and I found that it's actually created sources, like created data and said, oh, this article says this, but the article wasn't real. If you're not careful, and of course I hope AI is getting better and it won't do that forever, but there are some weaknesses where it will use sources like that it's made up. I had a colleague who actually was going to apply for a job, and she ran her resume CV through ChatGPT or one of the platforms, and she got it back. She read the first couple pages, was like, this looks great. She sent it off. She was so comfortable with how it changed the first couple of pages, she didn't look carefully. And she never heard back from the job. So she was like, oh, let me go check. I don't know what went wrong. It turns out the resume had given her jobs up until 2030. It had added on jobs to make her more compatible with the position. And so she had sent that in and never heard back from the company. So just a silly example, but that when she asked it to change her resume, it changed it completely, including in some ways that were not true. So you have to be careful about what AI is doing. I don't know if anybody else has some great examples like that. If so, please share it in the chat. Also, students need critical thinking skills and creativity. At least in the US, that is the debate we're having right now, is that students are lacking critical thinking when they're relying on AI, and they're lacking creativity. I have a fun, silly example from one of my colleagues in Sri Lanka. He told us this at a training, but he was doing an event trying to get students talking. They were so shy and afraid to talk. They were worried about making a mistake. And I think the lack of creativity and the pressure of the situation, he said, just tell me your favorite color. And he looked around and he saw that one of the students was asking ChatGPT, what's my favorite color? So that lack of even ability to respond in the moment, which I always connect this to what are the students going to need in their future careers? Like in my eyes, I am preparing my students for success in the workforce, success on their career paths, whatever that might be. And so that means they need to be able to speak in the moment and not rely on ChatGPT, right? I always tell my students, your boss is not going to wait for you to check ChatGPT to actually answer a question. You have to be ready in the moment. And yeah, AI lacks that critical thinking and creativity. It only can say what it's already been told. So you have to teach that to students. And it often changes unclear ideas when editing. So if you have an idea, you may feel like it's very clear, but AI doesn't realize what you mean. It just changes it. And it can change it in completely different ways. I've seen this with students a lot. They'll put something on paper. AI will change it. I'll ask them what they meant, and they meant something completely different, but they didn't check the AI after they, put it through. They didn't check the AI version. So check the comments. So here's the AI scale I use. I wanted to share this because I find it very useful. It's just it's part of my teaching pedagogy, I guess, to look at this, and I've added it into my repertoire of how I talk to students about what they're doing and how they're allowed to use AI. So this was created in just 2024, and so I've been using it ever since. I found it quite quickly after, and in the last 2 years, I can assign students how they can or cannot use AI. So no AI, zero use of AI as you work. AI as a study tool, they can use it to review materials, from making quiz questions, study asking for the highlights of your notes. AI as an idea generator, so coming up with essay topics or presentation ideas. You can also use it as an editor or a task assistant to help with tasks, such as for an essay outline or writing references, or full AI, right, where they just write the essay, the AI creates the essay completely. So I talk to students about this. I talk to them about it in class. I tend to be over here where I say no AI, or in some activities, we will use AI in class. So there might be some class activities where we use AI as an editor, even as a task assistant for certain pieces of the writing process. I might also tell students they could use it for brainstorming, but I try to actually have that conversation with students and even have them report to me when they write the essay. They have to have an AI section where they tell me how they used AI. That way, they're accountable for stating to me how they used it. Is it 100%? Of course not. But I want them to know that, this is a conversation. I'm not saying AI is evil, but I want you to actually be learning the skills. And so we have to make sure that we're moving in that direction. So I've already kind of told you this. AI is, I'll just quickly add that AI can be used as a tool for teaching these lessons. So that's what I encourage, and I can give you some examples of that. I have them listed later on. But AI as a tool for actually, like sometimes I have them write the essay, or sometimes we'll do activities in class for parts of the essay where they actually use AI for part of the process. It is a really great way to get them thinking about the strengths and weaknesses of AI, which will help them use them better. Okay, so I have written something. I'm just going to ask a quick question. It's not on there. No, I have not given full AI assignments to my students, but I've done full AI activities where we compare it, and I actually have an example here. I'll give you the overview now, but I can say a little more later. But they'll write an essay, and so for the should mobile phones be allowed, for instance, They'll write one version of the essay, their argument, and then I'll have them use AI to write the counter argument. And then I'll have them compare the two and ask questions about, okay, what can you use to see how it uses data, how it uses evidence, what are the strengths and weaknesses, but also is there anything you can learn from that to strengthen your essay? So there's an example that they're actually using AI, full AI for a particular activity, but then I'm asking them to analyze it and build their critical thinking through that. Okay, so has anybody, for those at home, who has taught yet? Can you give me a thumbs up if you've already been teaching in a classroom, whether it be like student teaching or anything else, who's taught in a classroom already? Okay. Oh yeah, quite a few. Okay, perfect. So if you have feedback, let me know. I know some of you are teaching younger students, some are teaching older students, and I haven't talked about that yet, but I do want to say, especially with the argument, there's a way you can have young people building arguments too, right? You're going back down to basics, but they still build those three pieces of the argument. Make a claim, use evidence, use reasoning. Young people can be doing this as well. And it's a really useful skill to learn. Like, we start learning this at a very young age. And of course, it's scaffolded. We learn in pieces and it becomes deeper. But I think that's really, really useful for students. So just a quick note there. If they're younger, they're less likely to be using AI. So there is that difference. I'm going to be speaking for assuming that they're using AI to do assignments, which I think is more true from what I've seen with older students. But that being said, I have some family members who, even at 10, 11 use AI sometimes. So I know it can happen at a very young age. Okay, so what I've seen, the themes I've seen, at least here in India, students are using AI to edit full essays, copy, paste, edit. How they should be using it is to ask for editing suggestions. And they should be questioning each of those suggestions. Does it fit their authorial voice? Does it fit what they want to say? They can use it almost like a copywriter, like, backup voice assistant. But students aren't doing that yet, and they don't know how really. They're using it to write full essays, but they could use it for feedback on full essays, but they should never, in my opinion, just say change the whole essay. They can ask for feedback on the essay and some ideas on how to change it. Some of those ideas are not going to be good ideas, right? So that's a really useful tool for them saying, oh, okay, some of this actually doesn't fit what I want to do with the assignment. Some students are using it to brainstorm. I personally think they should brainstorm after they've researched. So they already have some ideas in place. They've already gone through the process of doing some research because they want to be like, they need to be able to do that in the workplace. And that's that skill set that they can take and will transfer to the workplace with them. So if they don't know how to brainstorm, find good materials, identify good materials, that could affect their long-term success. And they're also using it to fix grammar mistakes. But I actually think it's better if they try to look at themes in their grammatical mistakes rather than fixing all of them. So they could ask AI, what are the most common mistakes in this essay? Can you identify where they are? And they could actually look and see, oh, these are the areas where I'm having issues in my writing. And they could actually fix those issues by using AI that way. But what students are doing is just having AI do it for them. So they're not learning. So it is what it is. I know that some people here in India have stated, I've heard it said, even by admin, that, they don't need perfect grammar because now AI will fix it. But the reality is, sometimes you're in situations in your life where you don't have AI. And so you have to be able to respond and work in that situation. So I always try to prepare students for that reality. Okay. So now we're going to go in for the last 50 minutes or so. We're going to talk about building writing assignments. And as I said, I know this is at one level. I do teach at university. I have taught K through 12 before, but my home is mostly university. So this can all be adjusted a bit. based on your skill set, but it is really useful to have this overview. So building argument writing assignments. If you want to teach writing, oh gosh, 1 second, sorry. I would say the first place to start is ensuring that students get the skills they need. I always start from there. I don't know what to say, my foundation of my teaching is the Bloom's taxonomy. I'm sure many of you have used this before. Can you give me a thumbs up if so? Maybe no? Oh, okay. So Bloom's taxonomy then is this great tool of what people need to learn. And you need to learn it's a foundational. So you have to start from the bottom and you work your way up. And if you want people to remember their skills and have transferable skills that go into long-term memory, you want to, within a unit, you want to do all of these levels. So you start from remembering and understanding, but you want to make sure that by the end of whatever it is you're studying, you've done it at every level. So for instance, you're learning about arguments, right? First, I need you to remember and understand. I might have you, do a Kahoot just to test your memory and your understanding. And then we're going to start applying the rules, trying to analyze how things work. By the end, I might have you create examples of your own or create some activity where you're actually using the knowledge you've learned, because when you're creating with it, it goes into your long-term memory. It's going to be more useful in the workplace later because you have that actual experience that kind of stores into your long-term memory. If you only remember and understand, a lot of you will note, I'm going to go down to the bottom for a second. Where does testing fit in? Where do you think testing fits in? And then I'll go back to my point. Okay, I'll actually take over. Testing is usually remembering and understanding. Depending on the test, if it has a writing section, it may go to apply and analyze. But testing doesn't usually go to evaluate and create. So that's a problem with testing with the way it is here in India. So that's where argument writing can be really useful, and I'm going to give you some other tools as well. Argument writing is just one example. But you want to make sure that within a unit or whatever it is you're studying, you start at remembering and that people are by the end creating with whatever they're learning. So for an example, with my English class last year, I taught all the material. It was a lot about English presentations, using their English. We did a lot of writing, and we did both general audience writing as well as academic writing. So what we did as a final project was create a newsletter. They had to create the newsletter. They had to write 2 articles each for the newsletter. They had to go through an editing process for the newsletter, and then they released it to friends and family and other students. So because of that, by the end of the semester, they had gone through remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, creating. And the bonus was that they were very, very proud of what they created, and they got to take that with them. And that's a skill set that they will take with them in the future. Another example, and it's a smaller example, but talking about academic writing and analysis with my current class, one of my current classes, I created a historical timeline activity where we had already, learned some things, but I wanted them to apply, analyze, and then maybe create something with it. So I assigned them a historical event in the US, and they had to take that event, learn about it, create an overview of the event, and then compare it to another event happening or any event happening in India at the same time. So they were creating this basically image of a parallel timeline of India and US and how these events had changed the histories. So it went all the way up through the Bloom's taxonomy. They weren't just remembering and understanding, they were doing something with the information they had learned. So there's another example. So all of this for me is because I want students to be moving up to the analyzing, evaluating, and creating. So that's always my goal. And That's the beauty of writing assignments, is that you're getting to that region. You're able to actually force them to analyze, evaluate, and create a new, put their ideas together in a new way. They use their authorial voice to share their own opinions. It's a form of creation. I think that, it's actually quite simple to build a good assignment. It's just 3 pieces in my eyes. It's the assignment overview and expectations. It's the learning goals. Connecting that to pedagogy is very important. I always connect it to Bloom's taxonomy for me, and then the rubric. So here's an example of an essay I recently gave just a couple months ago, right? I'm giving all the information here, I'm giving all the rules, but I'm also trying to keep it as clear and concise as possible. I'll send that to you as well. Let me quickly, I'm just switching tabs to send it to you in the chat. So give me just 1 second here. So if anybody wants to look at it, you can see the whole document there a little bit bigger. So in terms of assignment overview and expectations, of course, this will be different if you have younger students. I personally am adding my bibliography and citation style. I'm telling them how to cite, all of those basic things, assignment points and due date, submission place and form. So for instance, I say no PDFs, only Word documents, because I personally, this is just a tip because probably many of you haven't marked essays yet. If they send it to you in a Word document, you can go in and do track changes, and you can actually give them editing suggestions. And that way they can see everything you change and they can actually learn from it. That's standard practice in the US, but I found that actually most Indian teachers I've talked to hadn't learned that before. So it's really, really useful. And then, of course, you're going to state AI regulations there. So just stating what are the rules and going back to that AI scale. Is it no AI? Is that you're allowed to use AI in certain ways? Is it that you can use AI, but you must report how the student uses AI? Be very clear on that policy there. If it's no AI, you may want to add in consequences. In general, we always think of this as like, this is the student guide, right? So you're building a bridge to the student. Hopefully, if there are students like me, I was a kind of a nerdy student, I would read every single word of these, and it would help me know what to write, because I would say, oh, this is what the teacher's looking for. That's what the student should know at the end of the day. It should say everything you're looking for in clear and concise language. So that's all you really want to do here. And then your learning goals is also, it's standard practice globally to list your learning goals. In some ways, we say that it's more for the teacher than even for the students, but it's just practice that you want to tell the students, this is what you're learning here, so that they constantly know, this is what I'm trying to build, this is where you're going to go when you finish this activity. So in my case, right, I've listed, you're developing a clear and supported argument using evidence to support claims, applying critical thinking skills, demonstrating academic research skills, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm trying to clearly say, when you finish this assignment, this is what you will have learned. This is the goal of all of it. And it's going to fit, going back just for a second, it's going to fit with that Bloom's taxonomy, because when I'm doing something like this, I'm trying to get, oh no, it's a little bit stuck. Apologies. No. Please forgive me. Oh gosh. Okay, there we go. So we're trying to get to that top of that Bloom's taxonomy, right? To the analyzation, to the evaluation, to the creation. So the essay is really useful for that. So that means that you want to make sure they are evaluating, they are analyzing, and they are creating something new. So you're going to list it there. And then in terms of the rubric, I keep it quite simple. I usually have 5 categories. I have, this is kind of my basic rubric here. It could be different for different people. That's fine, of course. One of the things that I have changed with AI is that Grammar is worth less points now for me. I encourage students to not use AI to change their grammar. And I say, I'm going to take less points off for that because I want you to build your argument. So that's one direction I've gone in, one change I've made to make sure that students are rewarded for actually going through the process themselves. So I want students to know that, even if you're making mistakes here on this, you're still moving in the right direction. So I'm only going to I still take off some points for errors, and I'm still definitely pointing out everything they can improve. But I want them to not be incentivized to just use AI and not to actually learn through the process. So that's been relatively successful. I see some students actually going through the process and doing it, but there are others, even though I say that, who still use AI. So it only goes so far. There are still some students who feel a lot of pressure to use AI. My students have told me, one second. My students have told me they feel a lot of competition. They say that if my classmates are using it and I'm not using it, I'm falling behind. Then my teacher, when I've done teacher training on this topic, the teachers have said, my students are using it, so if I'm not learning how to do it, I'm falling behind. So everyone feels the pressure in this AI world to keep up with their skills and use it to do their job better, faster, etc. So just keep that in mind. For me, I always stay focused on the pedagogy. Where am I trying to get the student to? I want to make sure that whatever skills and whatever whatever marking I have is moving towards that. Just quickly check if there's any questions. No, okay. All right. So we're going to design an activity. So what I would like us to do is practice what we've been learning. So I have the same argumentative essay prompt. I felt this would be perfect because we could do this with various levels of, from younger students to older students. You could ask this question, ask them to build an argument. So there's the prompt. You've already built your own arguments. How would you actually build a sample writing assignment for your students? I want you to actually practice that today. So go ahead and build a writing assignment. You don't have to write everything, but you can actually take some notes on those 3 areas to the best of your ability. So going back once more, assignment overview. What are the expectations? What are the learning goals? How would you use the rubric? What would the rubric be? I want you to try to build that to the best of your ability. We're going to have a little bit of time to work on it. I'm going to give you at least maybe 10 minutes, and then we're going to share that with each other. Feel free to write on paper or on your computer, and you can actually share an overview in any form in the chat if you're willing, because that's going to be most useful. Is that okay? Okay, and the other thing to just quickly mention is how are you going to ensure that students use AI appropriately, and how would you reward non-AI use or not if that's an issue? So consider that when you're building your prompt, or your writing assignment. Okay, so go ahead and build your assignment. Back here. Just a quick note that I'm planning to give you until 4:35. If you need a little time after that, that's fine. I'll check in with you in just a few minutes to see how your project is going. All right, it's 4:35. Please let me know if you'd like a few more minutes. If you're ready to go ahead and give me a thumbs up. If I don't get thumbs up, I'll know you'd like a few more minutes. Okay, I think we need a few more minutes. Okay, so go ahead, take a few more minutes, and then we'll come and touch base on what you've created. Remember, the goal is to have a sample argument writing assignment for your students, whatever level they might be. It can be short and simple or a little more advanced, depending on who your students are. All right, I'll give you a few more minutes. All right. So Nidhi, I actually was hoping to make breakout rooms for my next slide, but I don't see the option here. Hold on. It looks like there's not an option within this platform, unless I'm just missing it.
Yeah, that's quite surprising because even I tried to look for it and I couldn't find it even in the advanced settings.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
normally it should, I use this for work as well. I know it's where it should be, but for some reason, it may just
Yeah.
be this version doesn't have it included. And so that's fine. We'll make do without it. You'll see on my next slide, I was hoping to actually send them into breakout rooms.
Yeah.
But that's okay. We'll work around it. That's fine. So can everyone see my slide still? Okay. We're going to continue on just because of time. If you don't have everything perfect, don't worry. At least you're working through that process and hopefully figuring out some examples of what you would include. So let's hear from you a little bit. We're going to discuss what you created. I'm not seeing anybody share anything. So let's hear from some of the participants. What did you create? How did you have your students doing this assignment? Is anybody brave enough to just share for a few seconds what you created? I always tell my class, it's just a few seconds of bravery. That's all I'm asking for. Okay. All right. Thank you, Tamana. Great. Okay, so you have permissible uses and prohibited uses as well. Okay, good. Alicia, I'm just reading what you wrote. What do you mean by two arguments? Oh, you mean two supporting, like two supporting facts almost, or sections. Okay, I'm assuming. Okay, excellent. Anyone else? Can you share? Okay, two supporting. Okay, thank you. All right, I'm assuming people are still working. Because of time, is it okay if I keep going? Or would you like a couple minutes to share? I'd love to ask Alish, was it hard to build this or did you feel comfortable building this assignment? And you can unmute and share. You're too quiet. Tamana, how was it for you? Was it easy to build this assignment? Was it challenging? How did you make decisions? What pedagogy did you use? And it's okay to not know the answers. I want to hear about your process. Can you unmute and share?
Yeah, ma'am, I mostly used the prompt that you mentioned. I took my ideas from that, so it was fairly easy after that.
Okay, so just taking the prompt and then, and did you think about the three pieces I asked you to include? You didn't include a rubric, but the other pieces you have there.
Yes, I didn't have enough time, so I just wrote it down a basic prompt for assessment.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you, Lana. And I see some people being quiet. Is anyone else willing to share? What did you create and how did you create it?
Do we have anyone else who has prepared even a portion of the activity, has done even some part of it?
I certainly hope so.
Please go ahead and share.
I think Sakshi has also shared something.
Let's see here. Yes, okay, thank you, Sakshi. So state your position, 2 well-developed points of support pieces. We usually say 3, but it can be 2 to 4. In the US, that's the standard. Include 1 counter argument. In the US, that's less commonly included. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. I've seen it used here in India before. It's certainly acceptable. But we often say that the counter argument can be incorporated into other sections, background, etc. as well. And then conclude with a clear and logical summary. Okay, very good, Sakshi. And I think what's really important is you want to give, remember, clear, concise guidance. So short and sweet is good, but you have to also make sure you're touching on all the important areas, because if you don't state it, the students will certainly miss the information. The other reality I have found with students, even if it's in there, they will probably miss it. So you have to say it, maybe, or say, write it down, mention it multiple times, really make sure they're paying attention to it. There are times where I've had an assignment like this, and I'll even put something at the bottom like, please come to see me to get extra credit because you read the entire thing. Or I've, given an extra random little piece of the assignment just to see if they're reading the directions, just because, a lot of students aren't paying attention. And what I've also found, even really great students, one of my students did something wrong and he said, no, it was never told to me. And I had to go through, it was part of my job to go through and tell him every time I told him the assignment. Luckily for me, I was able to find at least 7 times I shared with the class the exact assignment, because I had to kind of fight about his grade. He went above my head to the university. And he said, she never told me. He was very, very upset. He was actually a very good student, but he was so upset he missed it. But I had evidential proof. I was like, we talked about it this day. Here it was in the slides on this day. We talked about it on this day. And so that was really, really helpful because he was able to learn, oh, I just missed it, right? And so that also taught me a lot as a professor, because I was able to notice that also, if students don't understand certain subjects or certain concepts, sometimes something just goes over their head, no matter how many times you tell them. So as much as I can, I always check in with students as well, which was a really useful tip. Okay, so I want to finish up by talking about the AI piece of this. Now, all of you mostly wrote no AI in your assignment, but now I want you to think about, where could AI be useful? Going back to pedagogy, right? All of you should be grounded in your pedagogy. How are you trying to teach your students? What is your teaching, your teaching pedagogy? How do you, gosh, I'm forgetting the way to really want to say this, but what is your kind of model of teaching to get your students where you want to go? You want to incorporate that in here. So mine, I've shared with you, it's the Bloom's taxonomy. I'm always incorporating that in as a foundation of how I do things. I do a lot of so I'm lecturing or explaining information, but then I'm doing like a group model, and then I do it where they have to use the information, in groups. So basically I share the information, I model the information, I show them how to use it, I have them work in groups, and then I have them do something individually. And that's how I teach often. So a lot of my activities are built in that way. And I already have all of that built into my pedagogies, right? So I'm going to incorporate it here. And I can easily add AI to this. So for now, the last thing I want to do in class or in our workshop before we finish up is, how would you potentially use AI based on the AI scale? Can you be creative about how you use AI, do activities for this assignment? So for instance, maybe in class, so you can actually have a conversation that you lead, you can have them brainstorm or maybe at the end of your process, you can have everyone bring an essay in and they can go through an edited version of it using AI, but you can actually guide them through how to use it appropriately so they're not just copying and pasting. So actually, we'll just stay all together and add in the chat. Do you have any ideas going back to the AI scale, right? From no AI to full AI, using it as a task assistant, using it as a brainstorm tool. How would you use it in class? Using it for revision. What would you allow? What are some activities you could allow in class using that model? Be creative. All right, so I'm not seeing many ideas yet. I'm going to give you another minute or so to think, but just as a reminder, that scale is no AI, AI as a study tool, AI as an idea generator, AI as an editor, AI as task assistant, full AI. So please share any ideas you have. Just quickly add them into the chat. All right, I'm going to give just one more minute to add your ideas, and then we'll continue going just because of time. So please, if you think of any, even just a short one, don't be afraid, be creative, right? How could you use AI? Remember, if your goal is content, sometimes AI is not going to want, you're not going to want to use it, but sometimes you may want to use it as a critical thinking skill tool or something else. All right, thank you. There's some really great ideas coming in now. Thank you so much. All right, feel free to keep adding your ideas. We're going to keep moving just because of time from the US. So I'm always very respectful of time. I would try to always end on time. So hopefully we'll be able to do that today. These are excellent ideas. I think it's always going to depend on your goals, right? Those learning goals are really, really important, where you want to go. There are some assignments where you're only going to focus on remembering and understanding the bottom of the Bloom's taxonomy. There, it might be that you just have them create test questions, right? Just as somebody said, Anjali said. So using it as a study tool, and then they can actually, students can actually switch tests and they can challenge each other by using AI to create test questions, trading with each other, and taking practice tests. So you can do fun activities like that, or a mix of it, where there's maybe groups that are working together, creating these practice tests, and then giving them to each other. So you can do it in group format, you can do it in individual format as well. Idea generator, definitely. And what's really useful is that that can actually be a critical thinking activity as well, where you're looking at the ideas and actually kind of evaluating them, going up the Bloom's taxonomy, right? And saying, is this a good idea? Why or why not? And so them trying to express their opinions using what AI has come up on. And also that's really useful because one thing you want to teach students is AI is not perfect. So going through that process of identifying places where AI is not perfect is going to teach them how to use it better. Idea generation, yes. Think of a topic for writing and ask AI to create different versions of it. That could be really, really interesting, and judging different versions. I actually did something like that with one of my classes. I taught journalists. So I'm a former journalist, and I did a specific program for media students. And I could tell that all of the writing was coming from AI, and it was so bland. And so I wrote 2 different versions of an article about me. And so I could make up quotes. So one of them was a ChatGPT version and one was my own version. And I said, what one is more interesting? And they all chose mine. And I said, why is it more interesting? And we were able to identify, oh, my quotes, the storytelling, the anecdotes, all of these things add more information. It adds that authorial voice. And we were able to talk about it that way by showing an example that was ChatGPT and a better example that was written by a human. They were able to kind of see, oh, ChatGPT is okay, but it could be better. Okay, I'm seeing some more. Okay. To change the ending of a story after reading it. Oh, excellent. Yeah, asking AI to change the ending of a story. AI is not always great at stories from what I found. It's of course changing every day, but it has some faults in there. So having AI create different endings and seeing different endings and judging the different endings can be really useful. And yeah, Isha, creating it for flashcards, quizzes, practice tests, and get creative. How can you use that Bloom's taxonomy? So that's very useful for remembering and understanding, but how can it be useful for creating? At some point, you may also maybe you even have different groups, and you have some groups that are using AI and some that are only working individually, and you move around the room, and so it becomes a game. There's a lot of really creative ways you can use these tools. And that's kind of what I want to encourage you to do. Okay, so as we are running out of time, I want to finish up. I already told you about one of my favorite activities, which is I have the students write the essay first. They don't know necessarily at the time, but I have them write the first draft. My students, aren't always comfortable writing essays because they don't write a lot of research reports. So it's a practice session of learning how to do so. So then I have the AI write the opposite argument, and then we look at the strengths and weaknesses. We talk about authorial voice, and then I ask them to actually look back at the AI article and use it to make theirs better. I ask them to look at data and anecdotes. How does AI share its information? How convincing is it? How can you learn from it to make yours more convincing based on the rebuttal, right? That counter argument. So all of that comes into play, and it's a really useful activity for students, in part because I don't ever want them using ChatGPT blindly. This helps them not use it blindly. Okay, so to finish up, more or less, AI writing exercises are really, really useful for a few reasons. That critical thinking, building that understanding of authorial voice, considering audience engagement when you write. Writing from ChatGPT tends to be quite dull. And I'm trying to push my students to think about I always tell my students, you need to build a bridge to the mind of whoever's reading your paper. And if you're just writing ChatGPT, it's a little bit dull. So how can you keep the attention of your audience? How do you build a bridge? You have to consider their interests, using facts and stories that are more interesting than just what ChatGPT comes up with. Understanding that argument structure, it helps them with that, recognizing AI limitations and improving their revision strategy. So that's how I use AI in class. And there are many, many possibilities across the AI scale for how you can do so in your own class. I do want to finish with just a couple more things. I'll take just a couple more minutes and then we'll finish up. So argument writing is really, really useful for creating, evaluating, analyzing those top skills on the Bloom's taxonomy. So remember, you want things to go into the long-term memory and to become a skill set for your students. You have to do activities like that. And that's where India is going with the national education policy. So hopefully you'll be incorporating activities like that into class. I know there are some limitations within the Indian school system that, professors I work with have talked to me about. But even then, I see that's the movement that is happening here in India. So in addition, if you want to make sure that students are not using AI, try debates, presentations, process portfolios where they have to talk about the process in which they're doing things, case-based problem solving, data commentary, where they're looking at a piece of data and then commenting on it, like trying to analyze it. So you show a graph or something like that, and then they have to add some analysis of what it means. Multimodal tasks such as videos. I give you an example of the newspaper I gave, which had some multimodal elements as well. It was this online digital newspaper using Canva. Have them do peer teaching some weeks where maybe, so what I've done before, I've assigned students an article and they have to teach and lead a discussion on that article in class. Or I've also had them pick an article or newspaper, like newspaper article, book chapter, something like that, and they're going to present that topic to their peers in class. So something like that. You can also do a topic where they're going to explain this topic to the class. Usually in the US, when we do these types of activities, you might do 2 a week, and then over the course of the semester, every student will do it. We have smaller classes, so if you are teaching in a bigger class, it may not be possible. It just depends on the system you're in. Applied writing, where they have to analyze by connecting text of their own experiences, right? Because if you're asking them to explain their own experiences, AI can't do that for them. And then we're out of time, so I'm just going to go to the third question. I'm hoping that there was something in this session that was useful for you. But what is one key insight or takeaway that you gained from this workshop that you want to put into practice as you become teachers of your own classroom, whatever level it may be, whatever school level it may be, whether it's K through 12 or university, younger students or older? What is one key insight or takeaway you gained from the workshop? Please go ahead and share in the chat. And also, this is an opportunity for questions if anybody has any. Yes, please feel free to unmute and share your takeaway, or you can write it in the chat as we finish up.
Cassie, meanwhile, I was wondering, how do you monitor the use of AI inside the classroom? I mean, it's one thing to set a rubric and give certain pointers about how and where they can use AI, or teach them responsible use through certain assignments that you design. But for instance, you had written that they'll start with the brainstorming work in the class itself. So at that stage, or in a regular classroom, how do you ensure that they're using AI when you want them to use it and they're not on their phones otherwise?
This is hard anyway. I don't think I have a perfect system. I am very much known for, if I see a student on the phone doing anything they shouldn't do, I take it and I put it somewhere else in the classroom where they can't reach it. I am very much known for that, and students know I will do it. But I'm not like taking their phone, I'm just putting it out of reach. I'm like, you can leave it there for now, because you've shown that you're getting distracted. I know that students get distracted. So it is a risk I'm taking. The other reality is, in a classroom in India, I see it all the time. Even if students are pretending to pay attention, sometimes they're not supposed to be on phones. I see them on their phones under their desks, right? So this is the reality of the world we're living in. My personal approach is less about the phones and more about the activities I do in class to keep them engaged. I'm often checking in on students. I often go and I'll ask specific questions to people in very kind ways. Even if they mess up, I'm not going to, make them uncomfortable or anything like that, but I want them a little bit on their toes and engaged. So I will bring people back into the conversation if I think they're being lost too. I'll be like, what do you think of this? And I can even word it in a way that even if they've missed something, if they got distracted, I'm pulling them back into the conversation. So that tends to be my strategy. I've certainly had times where I'm like all phones put away, but I also don't always do that because I want to use phones as a material in class. I want them to use it for Kahoots or any other activities that I'm using. But it is a big challenge. There's no right way. There's no perfect way, because even if, I have no data to show what percentage of students are using it well at any given time, because it can be so easy. All of us know, it's true for me too. If I'm doing something for work on my phone, I accidentally end up on Instagram, right? All of us have been there. We're like, why am I here? Because some of it's just our brain automatically does certain things. But my mentality with it is, how do we bring students back into the fold? How do we make sure they know they get back to where they're going? Because I think that short attention span is normal, whether or not the phones are involved, and the phones just make it worse.
And it's not just a short attention span, the fact that the attention is fragmented. It's always in too many places at once. That's again problematic.
And the other thing I do, which once again, it's not about the phones. I do a lot of group activities. As I kind of mentioned, I have a style where it's called student-centered teaching. It's the direction India is moving in, as I mentioned, but there's a lot more teacher-centered teaching right now, which is where there's a lot of lecture. But my style helps a lot because I'm doing some lecture, but maybe it's 10 minutes, and then I'm forcing them to do something with that information. And a lot of that will be group activities, individual speaking activities. So that means they're not just sitting idle. And even if they're supposed to be listening, to some extent, the mind goes idle. So because they're actually doing things in class, that does tend to help a lot. There are, of course, some students who maybe will not want to do group assignments, or they will still get distracted, but it's easier to pull them in because I'm walking around the classroom checking on all the groups at that point. So they can still get away with it for a little bit, but I am going around. They know I will go around, and that they're a little more careful for the most part.
Yeah, we all do that.
Yeah.
So I was interested in one of the questions you asked about the assignment, that how does the rubric, I think, reward non-use of AI, I believe. Was it that?
Yes.
Yeah. So if your rubric awards non-use of AI, I was actually wondering, would it be that something which is completely written without using AI is 5 points, and maybe brainstorming, it was used for brainstorming, you get a 3,
Well,
and maybe it was
the
used for
only way-
brainstorming and outlining, you get 2, or what? And then it has to be based on honest reporting, or is it the plagiarism check?
No, I'm focused on grammar. When I say that, I'm focused on grammar because it's kind of that
Okay.
example I gave you already where all of my students say, I can't compete with the other students if I'm not using AI. So I use it even if you tell me not to. So so my answer to that is you can get the same grade or even higher if
Okay.
I'm able to see your process, because the grammar we can fix. We're gonna do a second draft anyway, right? We're gonna do a second draft. We're gonna go through an editing process in class. So I'm gonna grade a little less on the grammar and some of those mistakes, and I'm gonna
Okay.
reward more the argument, the authorial voice, some of those things that are it's more important and that might be missing in ChatGPT, so that students are incentivized to actually go through the process. Especially
Okay.
in a world where right now their mindset is, and maybe some of you in the class also have this mindset, because there's a lot of pressure I've seen in India for students to have this, where they think, if I don't use AI, I'm going to be behind all the other students. So I have to use AI. I have to stay competitive.
Right. We have 2 students who have commented in the chat box. So Purvi says, sound understanding of fallacies in arguments. I believe this will help my learners in their formal school writing, which is speech and debate, and also professional writing for their own use, such as SOPs, etc.
Yes, excellent. Thank you.
And Tamanna says, rather than discouraging the use of AI completely in the class, we should guide students towards the responsible use, since they are going to use it anyway. That's true. Yeah.
That is my takeaway. Now, every teacher can be different. There are many different policies, but the reality is, as I said at the beginning, and I'll say one more time, my goal as a teacher is to prepare them for their future in the workforce, whatever it may be. And AI is going to be part of that. So I do think it's becoming a new skill that we as teachers have to have.
Yeah, very true. Thank you so much. So if you don't have any more questions or comments, I think I can ask Sanya to give the vote of thanks.
So good evening, everyone. It is my privilege to present the vote of thanks for this enriching and insightful online workshop on designing arguments and writing assignments while maintaining responsible AI use. On behalf of the Department of Education, Shyama Prasad Mukherjee College for Women, I extend our heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed resource person, Dr. Cassie D. Filippo, for conducting such an engaging and thought-provoking session and for sharing such valuable knowledge and practical insights. Ma'am, we deeply appreciate the time and effort you have invested in making this workshop so meaningful for all of us present here. Such collaborations open valuable learning opportunities for pre-service teachers like us. I would also like to thank our conveners, Dr. Krishnapriya Sen and Dr. Nidhi Seth, and co-convener Dr. Toleka, for their guidance and constant encouragement. I would also like to thank Dr. Pushpa Kumari, their teacher in charge, for her leadership and encouragement, which made this event possible. A big thank you to all the volunteers and the organizing members whose hard work ensured the smooth conduct of the session. Lastly, I would also like to thank all the participants for their active involvement and enthusiasm, which truly made this session interactive and successful. With this, we come to the end of today's session. We hope to continue learning and growing through such enriching experiences and become more responsible, reflective, and innovative educators. Thank you once again to everyone for their time and efforts. It's been a wonderful learning experience. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And
Thank you,
Dr.
Sanya.
for organizing.
We did have 2 more people writing in the chat box. Yeah.
I've just
So
read
thank you,
them.
students.
Thank you so much, Isha and Purvi. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time, Cassie. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you again and have a great day. Good evening.
You too. Bye.
I'll give it just a second if anyone has questions and then I'll end the meeting.
I think,
I think that, should I end it? Is it okay?
yeah, I think so. Yeah, there are no questions. Thank you so much.
Thank
Okay.
you. I saw a couple of chats coming in, so I didn't want to end it without. Okay.
Yeah.